Good evening, everybody. I'm Tracy Casey-Arnold, better known as TA, coming to you tonight for Word Up. As we have launched a new month today, you guys, and a new week, and even a new word as our focus this week, you guys, is enough. About being enough, truly understanding that you are enough and not just enough. You are the choice. And so good evening, you guys. As we are diving in tonight, we are going to be in Judges 13 through 16. Now, hopefully some of you guys have already seen that notification and you were curious, so you went ahead and kind of opened up your Bible or grabbed your phone and went to your app and typed it in, because tonight, our story is about, to me, something that I would really want to see on the big screen. I would really want to see them throw this down on a big screen, is the story of Samson, one of the most strongest men in the whole entire Bible, someone that God gave extraordinary powers to and even favored, had a calling on his life that no matter what he did, no matter how many times he even went astray, no matter even when his strength was taken away, the Lord was able to use him, the Lord was able to bestow on him, and the Lord not only said, Samson, you're mine, but Samson, you're just downright perfect, even in your weakness. And so with that, you guys, before we get started, I want to definitely, as you guys always know, welcome those that have joined me tonight here on Facebook, and those that are going to join me later on, because this is a back-to-back live where we hop on live on YouTube right when this is done. And so welcome YouTube, welcome Facebook, and let me go ahead and do some shout outs as I normally do to welcome everybody here. And so let's see who we have on with me. And I'm going to adjust one thing here because I see that I need it. There we go. I want to welcome Mary Austin. Welcome, Mary Austin. So glad that you joined me tonight. And Leighton, so glad. Hello, my new friend. So glad that you joined me tonight as well. And then again, you got to help me with this name because you're hanging out with me. It's either Lady or Lottie. I need you to send me a message and do the whole pronunciation so I can get it right, because you and I are hanging out together and I want to say it right. Also, welcome Christopher Waller. So glad you've joined me tonight. Welcome Rachel Gomez. So glad that you are here as well. Jacqueline Prince, sister, so glad that you're here. Elizabeth Hagan, so glad that you joined me tonight. Walter Shellahorn, so glad that you're here. Jason Morris, welcome. Liz LeBron, so glad that you're here as well, you guys. And again, tonight, our story is going to be about Samson. Now, I hope you guys have heard about Samson, because, man, I remember back in the day when they did his story, just like they did the 10 Commandments, I was glued to the TV. I was really excited to be able to see them bring that, even back then, with the very little kind of cinematography they had, but they were bringing things into true color back then, just like they did with Cleopatra. Oh my God, that was a great movie. We're going to have to cover her one day. But oh my goodness, I loved this story. But when we came to this week, and when we launched our word, enough, I thought, Lord, what would be a great story to talk about enough? And so I literally sat there with my husband, falling asleep on him for the first time. And in my spirit, I heard it and I told him, I said, God, I think this is Samson. I really do. And so as he was telling me different stories, and I'll be honest, I was picking him apart. Oh, we've already talked about that. Everybody knows that. Everybody talks about him, all of these different stories are, wait a minute, who's that? No, that's not big enough. I literally went and read Samson and knew that this is where we needed to anchor our word at. Where we launched it yesterday, but we got it anchored in the word, you guys. And it is going to be the story of Samson. And so what I'm going to do, and this is kind of really unique, the story of Samson is covered in Judges 13 through 16. It's covered over 4 chapters. And it's covered during a time, kind of reminds us a little bit of now, where God basically sent 12 judges over a long period of time. Me and Quint were kind of looking, and it looks like it's over 300 and maybe 20 years period to judge his people, to get them to turn away from sin. But it was Samson, as we read, that God had called and ordained and written for him to lead his people out of captivity from the Philistines. He had a calling and a mission on his life that was so big. But what I like about this story, that calling, that mission, as it is just like you and I, wasn't something God bestowed on him when he was older, like Saul who turned Paul. Come on, Lord. It wasn't like David, who was already someone that was a boy already, a shepherd boy out in the field. And Samuel the prophet said, man, Lord, are you sure that's the king? And then it was actually formed even before the womb. See, this is a story that reminds me, not like Jesus, immaculate, but one that was ordained spiritually. One that was really given in a time that was spoken that you were going to have a child. Matter of fact, it was this woman who was barren, who couldn't have children, and an angel of the Lord. And what's crazy, nowhere in the Bible does it have her name. It just tells us that she is the wife of a man named Zora. That's all we know. She's got no name, y'all. She bared that child, and they still don't have a name for her. But lo and behold, she was barren, couldn't have children. And an angel of the Lord, which we find out later was the Lord, appeared to her and told her, you're going to have a child. And not only are you going to have a child, this child that you're going to bear is going to be someone that's going to, just like Moses, lead my people out of captivity from the Philistines. Now imagine being a woman who's not been able to have children, and an angel appearing to you. Well, it was the moment, if you read chapter 13, that I was dying out laughing, because to me it was such a great story that had you rolling on the floor, to where she goes and screams and takes off to her husband Zora and says, guess what? And she tells him that an angel of the Lord appeared to her and said they were going to have a son. And not only did the angel tell her she was going to have a son, the angel appeared and told her specific instructions that she must do in order for this son to be someone that was going to be dedicated 100% to the Lord and to do the Lord's work. She could not drink any foreign fruits. She couldn't drink anything that was tainted or even any wine. She also could not eat anything that was impure. She had to keep her body, her womb, sanctified. So as she told her husband, he did the typical thing that any husband would do. I'm at my little blurb in there. He said, okay, well, let me go call out to the Lord and let me see if this is really truly him. Lord, if this was you that came to my wife, then I want you to appear again. And Lord, if this is you, can you just do me one favor? And I can't tell you how many of us would love to request this from the Lord right now. Can you give me instructions on how to raise this kid? And if you could appear, Lord, and give us instructions on what to do and how to raise this kid, I sure would appreciate it if it was you. So here we are a couple of days later. Zora is out in the field working. The angel of the Lord appears. But of course, her husband is not with her. And I could just see that. I could see me. Oh my God. Okay, I need you to stay right here. My husband probably thinks I'm crazy because I've not been able to give him a kid. So can you just stay right here while I go and get him? Don't move. Don't move. You ain't gonna move, right? I could just totally see myself doing that. Taking off running and stopping to turn back to make sure it was still there and screaming all the way, Quentin! Oh my God, I could see myself. And so lo and behold, she goes and gets Zora because again, she ain't got no name. Come on. And she gets her husband. He comes before the angel. And the angel basically repeats what he told his wife, that even though she's not been able to bear a child, she was going to bear a child. And he was going to be a chosen one of God. Not only chosen and favored, but he was going to be the one that was going to lead his people out of captivity yet again. Remember, this is a time and a period where they've already been led out of Egypt from the Pharaoh, okay? And then here's Joshua leading them into the promised land, and they find themselves, because they didn't do what God told them to do, they found themselves in 40 years, and then find themselves where God ended up letting them be captive again. Oh my gosh. And then had to bring judges to try to help them to turn away from their sin. Sounds like 2020 to me. So here we are in a moment just like this. And lo and behold, he tells them that their son's going to lead his people out of the captivity of the Philistines. and then brings the rules again of what she cannot do. Fast forward, they bear a son. And again, if you look at Judges 13, 14, 15, and 16, you will see that the other thing that happened with Samson is he grew long, beautiful hair. Beautiful hair. And one of the other instructions that the angel told Samson's father and mother is that a razor was never, ever, ever, ever supposed to touch his head, which means don't ever cut it. Don't ever alter it. Don't ever break any strands off that head. So lo and behold, he grew favor. He was a good-looking guy. He was strong. He was just favored among the people. But he had one problem. He loved the girls. And not only the girls, he loved the Philistine women. These were Philistines who didn't believe in the Lord, weren't following the Lord, and worshiped other gods. And he fell in love with a woman who was a Philistine. Fell in love with her so much he kept going back to see her. That one day he decided, that's it. I want her for my wife. That he ran home to his mom and dad. And I think it's funny how the Bible throws it down. He didn't say, look, Mom, I really want to be with her. He commanded his mom and dad, you will get her for me. I want her as my wife, and you will get her for me. So after they had a conversation of trying to talk him out of it, trying to point him to other women that were with God, they knew they couldn't change his mind, that his father packed up and went with him to where his new wife lived. So they show up. He talks with her again. He makes the confirmation, this is my girl. This is my missus. This is my wife. And lo and behold, they decide to get married. They throw a huge festival. And what I love about this story is that we start to see the strength of what God has in Samson. On his way to where his wife was at with his dad, he came across a lion. It was a baby lion who came at him to charge him and attack him. Samson, right there with his bare hands, was able to rip the jaw and the lion wide open. Now, he didn't tell his dad, he didn't tell his parents what had happened, but all of a sudden we see a glimpse of what God was going to do. And what I also love about this story is that there was one more thing that the angel of the Lord told his parents. It was crazy because I've read this several times, but as I listened to it again, I had to come back to it again. In the very beginning of 13, it's one line. And it says that little did they know that God was going to use Samson with all of his temptation as the way to take the Philistines down. So here is marriage to the Philistines. Here's this strength that we see with this lion. Here's this festival where they're celebrating the wedding, and all of a sudden, he decides to strike a riddle. And it was a riddle that he gave to his wife's people and said, if you could crack this riddle in 7 days, I will give you clothes and I will give you fruit and I will give you things for you to eat. But if you cannot crack it in 7 days, you'll give all that to me. Days go by and his people could not crack it. And the 7th day was upon them that they decided to go to Samson's wife and tell her, listen, what did you do? You brought him into us, and now we're going to starve because we can't figure out this riddle. You use who you are as his wife and get him to tell you the answer to the riddle. And if you don't get the answer, we're going to kill you and your dad. So lo and behold, she goes and she approaches Samson, begging him to tell her what the answer of the riddle. He ignored her for 3 days. And on that last day, he got tired of her nagging. Men, I don't want to hear you right now. I know you're going to say, yeah, I get Samson. When my wife nags me over and over, I get what that feels like. That he decided to tell her. And lo and behold, it was the 7th day. They answered the riddle. And Samson was enraged. Because he knew that meant that they went to his wife. And they coerced her. They manipulated her. and his heart was broken because she gave in, that a big old rage came out of Samson. And the second action that we see is Samson literally going to town in their city. He took foxes, paired up by two, tied their tails together, and attached a torch of fire, several pairs, and unleashed them in that city. And lo and behold, many of their buildings were burned down. When they asked who did this, they found out that it was Samson. And lo and behold, they made an account to attack him. Well, right before that, Samson had this remorse of what had happened. And he decided to approach the dad of his wife to say, look, I want my wife back. And lo and behold, the father told Samson yet again that, you know what, I gave her to one of our companions and she's no longer your wife. And again, Samson was enraged. And this time he knew that he had every right to attack the Philistines. And so I want to stop right here because I want us to actually read the next two chapters, because this is chapter 13 and 14, and I want us to read 15 and 16. These are really short because I want to really talk to you about when God has a calling on your life. When he has written something for you to do, even in the womb, it is mixed into your DNA. And no matter what happens in the world, no matter even what happens to you, no matter how much you feel you're not qualified or not good enough, the plans that God has for you will be done. So let's go ahead and grab you guys. And again, welcome those of you who have joined me tonight. So excited that you have. Welcome Charlene. Welcome James Skinner, Javier, Stephen Lewis, Eslin. I hope I say this right. Eagle-Eye, so glad that you've joined. Pastor Irvin, Haley Hascott, Anthony Wallace, Mary Austin, Robert Anthony, so glad. Lisa LeBron, Jason Morris, so glad that you're here. You guys, I'm so glad that you joined. And again, if you joined me, please share this. And Una Francis and Anthony Beckford, so glad that you guys are here. And again, I can only see the number up at the top of those that have liked the page or are following me, but there's many of you on. And Cindy, welcome. Cindy Colander, welcome. And then also Don Evans, who has joined. And so what we're going to do, you guys, we're going to turn in our Bible, and we're going to read, you guys, the message that starts right here in chapter 15. This is where now Samson is going to get his revenge. And this is going to recap that whole entire scene of with him tying the tail of the foxes together, which to me really starts this feud with the Philistines now wanting to kill Samson. So let's read together. Later on, at the time of the wheat harvest, Samson took a young goat and went to visit his wife. He said, I'm going to my wife's room, but her father would not let him in. I was so sure you hated her, he said, that I gave her to your companion. Isn't her younger sister more attractive? Take her instead. Samson said to them, this time I have the right to get even with the Philistines. I will really harm them now. So he went out and caught the 300 foxes, tied them tail to tail in pairs, and then fastened a torch to every pair. Lit the torches and let the foxes loose, going through the grain and even going through the vineyards and the olive groves to burn them all down. When the Philistines asked who did this, they were told Samson, the Timnite's son-in-law, because his wife was given to his companion. So the Philistines went up and burned her and her father to death. Samson said to them, since you've acted like this, I swear that I will not stop until I get my revenge on you. He attacked them viciously and slaughtered many of them. Then he went down and stayed in a cave in the rock of Etam. The Philistines went up and camped in Judah, spreading out near Lehi. The people of Judah asked, why have you come against us to fight? We have come to take Samson prisoner. They answered, to do to him as he just did unto us. Then 3,000 men from Judah went down to the cave in the rock of Etam and said to Samson, don't you realize that the Philistines are rulers over us and we're in their captivity? Why have you done this to us? He answered, I merely did to them what they did to me. They said to him, "We've come to tie you up and hand you over to the Philistines." Samson said, "Swear to me that you won't kill me yourselves." "Agreed," they answered. "We will only tie you up and hand you over to them. We will not kill you." So they bound him up with 2 new ropes, led him up from the rock. As he approached Lehi, the Philistines came towards Samson, shouting. Right then, the Spirit of the Lord came powerful upon Samson. The ropes on his arms became like charred flax, and the bindings dropped from his hands. Finding a flesh jawbone of a donkey, he grabbed it and struck down 1,000 men. And then Samson said, "With the donkey's jawbone, I have made donkeys of them. With the donkey's jawbone, I have killed 1,000 men." When he finished speaking, he threw away the jawbone, and the place was called now Ramoth Lehi. Because he was very thirsty, he cried out to the Lord, "You have given your servant this great victory today. Must I now die of thirst and fall into the hands of the uncircumcised?" Then God opened up the hollow place in Lehi, and water came out of it. When Samson drank, his strength returned, and he was revived. So the spring was called En Hakor, and it is still there in Lehi. Samson led Israel now for 20 years in the days of the Philistine. But now he meets Delilah. And this is where we now see the power of God and the plans over Samson's life become fulfilled. Beginning of chapter 16. One day Samson went to Gaza, where he saw a prostitute. He went in to spend the night with her, and the people of Gaza were told, "Samson is here." So they surrounded the place, and they laid in wait for him all night light at the city gate. They made no move into the morning and stayed all night long. At dawn, they said, "We will kill him." But Samson laid there only until the middle of the night. Then he got up and took a hold of the doors of the city gate, together with 2 posts, and tore them loose, bar and all. He lifted them to his shoulders and carried them to the top of the hill that faces Hebron. Sometime later, he fell in love with a woman in the valley of Sorek, whose name was Delilah. The rulers of the Philistines went to her and said, "See if you can lure him into showing you the secret of his great strength and how we can overpower him, so we may tie him up and subdue him. Each one of us will give you 1,100 shekels of silver." So here was Delilah, a woman that Samson fell in love with again, another Philistine woman. 2 sins against the Lord. And here they are saying, "Look, we will give you 1,000 shekels each." That's a lot of money. "If you can lure him, seduce him, and find out what is the power and the root of his strength." So Delilah said to Samson, "Tell me the secret of your great strength and how you can be tied up and subdued." Samson answered her, "If anyone ties me with 7 fresh bowstrings that have not been dried, I'll become as weak as other men." Then the rulers of the Philistine brought her 7 fresh bowstrings that had not been dried, and she tied him with them. When the men hid in the room, she called to him, "Samson, the Philistines are upon you." But he snapped those bowstrings as easily as a piece of string. It snapped and it came loose like a flame. So the secret of his strength was not discovered. Then Delilah said to Samson, "You've made a fool of me. You lied to me. Come now and tell me, how can you be tied?" He said, "If anyone ties me securely with new ropes that have never been used, I'll become as weak as any other man." So Delilah yet again took new ropes and tied him up with them. Then with men hidden in the room, she called to him, "Samson, the Philistines are upon you." But he snapped that ropes off his arms as if they were threads. Delilah then said to Solomon, "All this time you've been making a fool of me and lying to me. Tell me how you can be tied." Now I'm going to pause here like a telenovela because I'm sorry. Here she is talking about how you've made a fool of me, But this woman is asking Samson now twice, what is your strength? And twice what he said, she's binding him up and calling the Philistines. So I'm sorry, I'm having a little problem with this. And I'm like, wow. And I remember reading this thinking, surely he's going to have a confrontation with her. Nope. He replied, if you weave the 7 braids of my head into the fabric on the loom and tighten it with the pin, I'll become as weak as the other men. So while he was sleeping, Delilah took the 7 braids of his head, wove them into the fabric, and tightened it with the pin. And again she called to him, Samson, the Philistines are upon you. He woke up from his sleep, pulled up the pin in the loom with the fabric, and stood. Then she said to him, I'm sorry, I could just see the scene. How can you say that you love me? When you won't confide in me. You know how people flip the script? This is Delilah flipping the script. That she knows at this moment now, she's got to flip it on him. How can you say you love me when you won't confide in me? This is the 3rd time you've made a fool of me and haven't told me the secret of your strength. With such nagging, she prodded him day after day until he was sick to death of hearing her. He needed to leave. But he said, no razor has ever been used on my head. Because I've been a Nazirite dedicated to God from my mother's womb. If my head were shaved, my strength would leave me, and I would become as weak as any other man. In verse 18, when Delilah saw that he had told her everything, she sent word to the rulers of Philistines, come back once more. He has now told me everything. So the rulers of the Philistine returned with the silver in their hands to pay her. After putting him to sleep on her lap, she called for someone to shave off the 7 braids in his hair. And she began to subdue him, and his strength left him. Then she called, Samson, the Philistines are upon you. He awoke from his sleep and thought, I'll just go out as I've done before and shake myself free. But he did not know that the Lord had left him. Then the Philistines seized him, gouged his eyes out, and took him down to Gaza. They bound him with bronze shackles. They set him to the grinding grain and put him in prison. But the hair on his head began to grow again after it had been shaved. Now the rulers of the Philistines assembled to offer a great sacrifice to Dagon, their god, and to celebrate, saying, our God has delivered us from Samson, our enemy, into our hands. Let us celebrate. And when the people saw him, they praised their God. Our God has delivered the enemy into our hands, the one who laid waste our land and multiplied our slain. While they were in high spirits, they shouted, bring out Samson to entertain us. So they called Samson out of the prison, and he performed for them. When they stood him among the pillars, Samson said to the servant who was next to him, put me where I can feel the pillars that support the temple so that I may lean against them. Now the temple was crowded with men and women. All of the rulers of every single place in Philistine, all the leaders of Philistine were there. And on the roof were about 3,000 men and women watching Samson perform. 28, I love this part. Then Samson prayed to the Lord, Sovereign Lord, remember me. Please, God, strengthen me once more, and let me with one blow bring revenge on the Philistines for my 2 eyes. Then Samson reached toward the 2 center pillars on which the temple stood, bracing himself against them, his right hand on one and the left hand on the other. Samson said, let me die with the Philistines. And then he pushed with all his might, and down came the temple on all the rulers of the Philistines and all the people in it. Thus he killed many more when he died than when he did when he was alive. And then his brothers and his fathers and whole family went down to get him. they brought him back and buried him between Zorah and Eshtal in the tomb of Manoah, his fathers. He had led Israel 20 years. You know, I love this story because there's just so many things in here that talks to me about who our God is when it comes to us being enough. The angel of the Lord appeared to Samson's mom and gave some specific instructions. And what I love about this is that with these instructions, he basically told them that Samson's strength was in his hair. Come on, God. Woo. That there was not a razor to touch his head. That all these years that went by as Samson was a boy, a teenager, and became a man, this is what Samson believed. That the hair was the source of the strength. And as we start to see Samson come against every challenge with the Philistine, we start to see him emerge his strength, become enraged, and with every situation, he was taking down Philistines left and right. And remember what I said earlier, God told his parents, this son that you're going to bear is going to be mine. He is going to do my work, and he will be what I use to be the beginning of leading my people from the enemy of the Philistines. And with every single weakness that Samson had, every single moment of weakness, whether it was for the woman of the Philistines, which totally went against what he believed, or it was his anger to want to get revenge, every single moment God used that. He used the women to woo Samson. He used the women to get Samson to fall in love. He used the women to even sacrifice his wife, knowing what that would do to Samson, knowing that Samson would be enraged, knowing that Samson would retaliate, knowing that Samson would be so enraged that he would want to take revenge. And every single time, God would allow him to receive the power of the Lord, to be his tool, to be his weapon, to be his hand, to defeat the Philistines. Every single thing that Samson went through, his weakness, and even in his strength, God used him because he said Samson was enough, period. See, he had made a decision prior to Samson being in the womb of who Samson was going to be. He made a decision before he was ever arriving to the wife of who Samson was going to be. He put a calling on Samson and bestowed him with favor and power far before he was ever in his mother's womb. So much that when he molded her, when he took her, when he placed Samson in her womb, the DNA of the power of God was already the foundational piece of everything else that made up the baby. It was already in the blood. That no matter what Samson did or didn't do, his DNA couldn't change. He was written to be for the Lord. He was written with a plan on his life. He was written with the mission that he was going to fulfill in his weakness, in his greatness, and even in his death. God's plan would be fulfilled because when he formed Samson, he said, "You are perfect for me. You are enough. You are sufficient." That it didn't matter what Samson did. God's plans were going to be fulfilled. And the part that I love the most is that we saw great strength from Samson when he had hair. I mean, ripping a lion apart, taking a donkey and using it to kill thousands of men. My goodness, even having this intelligence to know to tie foxes together and to use them to go and burn things down, to even be smart enough to know to let his people bind him and take them to the Philistines. See, instead of him hiding out in the cave, he's like, oh, you're going to take me to him? Oh, yeah, go ahead. Just do me a favor. Just don't kill me, okay? Because his DNA already knew, don't kill me because I'm going out to fulfill another part of my mission. Those that you take me to, because of my DNA, they will be going down. See, in every single situation, in every single moment, in every single challenge that Samson faced, God used that to fulfill his plan. Every moment. He even raising up Samson's enemies. He knew that Samson had to have an enemy. He knew that Samson even had to be captured by the enemy. Come on. Woo! He knew that even in those moments, I'm sorry, I've got my grandbaby calling me right now. That even in those moments, he knew that the plans that he had for Samson's life, every single step was orchestrated. So much that even when he couldn't see, which is what got him in trouble with the women, and even when his hair was gone, which meant the strength of the Lord was gone, even when he was an empty vessel, empty, that's when God was able to exude and to display his perfect strength. There were no eyes. There was no strength. Samson was empty. He was at his weakest moment. Everybody thought he was done. Everybody thought there was no way. Even Samson felt that. But to see Samson in that moment of weakness, cry out to the Lord, and the Lord answered. And the Lord fulfilled him with the perfect power in that moment to take a whole arena down. I don't think Samson could have done that when he had hair. I don't think Samson could have done that when he had strength. I don't think Samson could have done that even when he could see. He had to be broken down in such a way that the only thing he could do was to call on the Lord, because there was nothing in him to finish it. God had to finish it. And in that moment he called on the Lord showed up and did what he planned, what he told his mom he was going to do, and took every single enemy down. But it was only in the moment of pure weakness that God finished the job. You know, so many of us, my grandbaby is just sitting here watching me. I wish I could see this. She is listening to this story. Go, baby, because she loves listening about Jesus. Some of us have things in our life that are telling us that we're not good enough. Some of us had things in our life that told us we were somebody, and we've lost it now. Some of us have had things taken away from us, and we don't know how we're going to even live another day or how we're going to persevere. Some of us have gone through destitution and feel like there is no life. And some of us are in a place to where everything has been taken away, that we're like, God, where are you? But what this story shows us was somebody so mighty with a big calling on their life, that in those moments, all you got to do, number one, is to call out to the Lord and say, Jesus, I need you. I can't do this. I need you to do it. And the plans that God has for your life will be fulfilled. And it is in our weakness. Everything that God is doing right now to put us in a place of weakness is where God is going to show up and perform one of the biggest miracles that he's ever performed before. But he couldn't do it when we were strong. He couldn't do it when we could see. He couldn't do it when we were in our own mind. He couldn't do it when we weren't going to him every day, asking him, praying to him, laying down our life for him. But now in the state that we're in, he's emptying us out. He's breaking us down. So when we call out to him, like we've been praying, he's going to show up and defeat the enemy. It doesn't matter what's going on, as I said on Monday, in the world. It doesn't matter what they tell you. It doesn't matter how they scare you. That when you give your life to Jesus, when you give everything you are to Jesus, That even when you're flat on the floor and don't even know how you're gonna get up, because you just got news that someone passed away, and got news 3 days later, somebody else, and a week later, somebody else passed away. Or you're having strife in your family, or strife in your marriage, or strife with your kids, and you just say, I can't do this anymore. God says that's exactly where I want you to be. That all you got to do is call out to me, because I'm going to do it. Or even when we feel that we're not enough because we don't have the qualifications, we don't have the experience, or the world is telling us that we're not enough and we don't fit even for the color of our skin, or even if we are a woman or a man. It is not the world that dictates our worth. It's not the world that dictates the outcome. It's not the world that dictates the victory. It is our God. Because every single one of us were written and formed with him first before we were ever in the womb. It's just in the womb he created us perfectly. And in our DNA is our God's DNA. And we have his power, but only when we are truly submitted to him. Only when we are empty can God take over and fill us up, which means God takes over and gets it done. There is nothing about you that is not perfect. There is nothing about you that is not enough. According to our God, you're more than enough. You're an overflow and you're an abundance. So don't let enemies tell you something different. Don't let even forsakenness of relationships like Samson tell you something different. Don't even let the world tell you something different. Just call out to God, and he will be there. Don't even let your disabilities, things you can't do well. You know, this story, which I didn't even think about until I sat in this seat, so reminds me of my life. God took my hair when I was 5. And every single day I looked in that mirror, I saw something unfit, disabled, not enough, not good enough. And at times I felt like I was downright wrong. But every part of those moments that God had me walk through from 5 all the way to 43, because I'm 50. He used every single moment that I cried, every single moment I couldn't get up, every single moment I was ridiculed, every single moment I was bullied, every single moment someone pulled off my wig and ran off with my wig, and there I was running for cover. Every single moment, even with men that I met that when they found out I was bald said, I can't do this, and wouldn't even call. Every single moment, even with friends that would forsaken me because I was dealing with something really heavy and they just thought I was too much. Every single moment, even with adults that bullied me. That was God's plan. He used every single tear, every single heartbreak, every single abuse, every feeling of forsakenness, every feeling of abandonment, every feeling of feeling disabled and not good enough. And he sure did use my suicidal thoughts to get me to be so low, and even my abusive relationship to get me to be so low and so empty that he could now come, take over, and fulfill his plans. Because every part of my life was a key piece to even getting me here. And if I didn't go through those things, I wouldn't be here. If I didn't go through those things, I wouldn't be where I'm at in my life, being able to be used by God in a way for those that he's ordained me. I'm not here for everybody. I'm here for the ones that he's ordained me to be here for. And I would have never known my true value, that the only person who truly makes me feel value is God. I've been forsaken by friends and family, but God. I've been forsaken with not having contracts and having to hawk everything in my home and live on a mattress. I've been forsaken, but God. I tried to commit suicide, but God. And I've had moments where I didn't even get out of the bed, but God. The plans that are written in you cannot be burned, cannot be altered, and no matter what you go through, they cannot be removed. You're perfect for God, and you're enough. And as I said on Monday, this is the time that I believe that he's raising us up. So don't let your past or your pain, or even what's happening in the world, or even in your own home, take that from you. God used Samson from the very beginning, when he was perfect physically, all the way to the very end when he was broken, empty, and weak. God finished it because he called Samson perfect. So I love you guys. Again, I really hope this story, I'll be honest with you, I was struggling because I wanted to read every single chapter to you. I wanted you to feel this story. And sometimes when God brings me chapters, I want to read it all. But we'd be here for an hour and a half. Now, some of y'all would still be with me. I know that because y'all are really dedicated to learn and not just hear it and run. You want to eat the scroll. You want to understand it. But I wanted to try to paint a picture of the story so that we could get to chapter 16 when he was broken and God showed up. So before I end this, because my grandbaby is still with me, y'all, she's like, Mimi, preach the word. She's right there. She ain't going nowhere. She has set her phone up in a way, and I'm watching her. She's in front of the TV. She ain't moving. But I want to do some shout outs here to you guys before I go, because I want to just welcome you guys, some of those that have hopped on with me tonight. Jacqueline McLean, welcome, welcome. Pablo Martinez, Patsy Pitt, welcome. Daniel Harris, welcome. Diane Sadberry, welcome. So glad that you're here. Pamela Flowers, thank you for joining me tonight. So glad that you're here. Trevor Palmer, so glad that you're here. Kenneth Bradford, so glad that you're here. Just welcome everybody. And again, as I tell everybody, I love this name, Patty Wainwright, Patty, Paddy, not Patty. So glad you're here, you guys. And as I tell everybody, if you just got one thing from this, just one thing at all, please share this, you guys, because there are many people right now that need to know they're enough and they're beyond that. They're perfect, and God wants to use them right where they are, and the plans that he's written for them will be done no matter what is happening in their life. And so I love you guys. I will be here Thursday night with my brothers. You guys at 6:55 Central Standard, 7:55 on the East Coast as we come together to kick off September with the 411, you guys, with Superhero for Christ show. And then I will be on Instagram, you guys, tomorrow at 11:55 Central Standard, 12:55 on the East Coast, and again on Friday for Love Friday. And then we will be joining right here, you guys, Friday night at 6:55 Central Standard for those of you who need to just hop on and pray. Now, every time I come over here to my outro, I always get a little nervous because sometimes it's ready and sometimes it's not. And for some reason, this doesn't look like my outro video, but I'm going to hit it anyway. Okay, but I love you guys. Be blessed, and I will see you guys Thursday night. Bye-bye.